if you want to get started.
Okay, welcome everybody to this lightning session from the UFF Fellows from the 2023 cohort. These lovely people are going to be sharing we're going to be giving you a taster of each of their areas of research. We have 6 fellows here. Unfortunately, 2 fellows couldn't make it. And we're going to go through all the presentations first, and then we'll address question and answers at the end. If you have a burning question, please do drop it in the Q&A section. I will be monitoring the Q&A section as things move forward. I should have introduced myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Lara Ramdin. I am an emeritus board member, and together with my lovely friend, Professor Jonathan Deutsch, we have been working with the UFF Fellows for the last year. We're delighted to be here today with this great group of scientists who are moving the understanding of upcycled foods forward and who represent the future of sustainable food systems. So I'm very glad to see all of these people from all over the world, because we are a global organization and a global movement. How are things going to run today? So I am going to stop talking and I'm going to hand over to Jonathan to do a quick intro on the UFF Fellows. And then he will hand over to Christina O'Keefe from Kerry. Kerry was the sponsor for the 2023 UFF Fellows program. So she's going to talk a little bit about that. Once we've done that, we're going to get straight into the presentations, and we're going to start with Zenit Boz from the University of Florida. That's going to go for about 72 minutes. And then at the end of that 72 minutes, we're going to tackle the Q&A. So I will just see how many, just wait for a few more participants. I think it's 8:04. I'll give 1 more minute for more participants to join us, and then we'll crack on. Okay, Jonathan?
Yeah, sounds great. I can actually do my part now because it's being recorded for any latecomers. I'm John Deutsch. I'm a professor of culinary arts and science at Drexel University, and I direct the Drexel Food Lab, which is a food product development and culinary innovation lab. I'm the past president of the Upcycled Food Foundation. Dr. Ramdin and I are now emeritus board members, which is lovely. And one of our projects in that capacity is this fellowship. So we started the fellowship a few years ago, and I started personally with a little seed grant because there was an overwhelming need from membership for research in this field. And while we can't fund properly the 6 or 7 figure enterprise of upcycled food research that's really required, and we leave it to federal agencies and private foundations, corporations to do a lot of that support. We did feel that as an association we could catalyze some research and build connections among the fellows in hopes of getting some of that support. So the first cohort was very successful. I'm so thrilled that Kerry came in to sponsor this cohort, and you'll see the fruits of that support, the ROI, so to speak, in this phenomenal group of researchers. And we're hoping to continue this program. So if anyone's interested in getting involved as a supporter or a friend to this program, we hope you will, so that we can have another group of fellows continue. And with that, I thank you for joining, and I hand it over to Christina O'Keefe from Kerry Foods.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Christina O'Keefe. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Kerry North America and a huge advocate for upcycled foods and ingredients. So for those of you who don't know, Kerry is the world leader in science-backed sustainable nutrition in the food, beverage, and pharmaceutical sectors. We innovate with our customers to create great tasting products with improved nutrition and functionality while ensuring a better impact for the planet. So our leading consumer insights, global R&D team of over 1,100 food scientists and extensive global footprint really enables us to solve our customers' complex challenges with differentiated solutions. At Kerry, we are driven to be our customers' most valued partner, creating a world of sustainable nutrition. Will reach over 2 billion consumers with sustainable nutrition solutions by 2030. The innovation and use of upcycled ingredients and products is a key lever in transforming our food system. And at Carey, we strongly believe this and will continue to incorporate upcycling into our own portfolio of technical solutions. We were honored to be the sponsor of the 2023 Carey Upcycled Food Foundation Fellowship Cohort and to support the continued research to drive this important cause. I personally am super excited to see and hear about the research results and the work that you guys have done over the last year or so on upcycled ingredients and insights. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back over to the team here, and we'll start listening. So Dr. Laura.
Thanks so much, Christina. Okay, let's crack on. We're going to start with the first lightning talk from Zinette Bors from the University of Florida. The title of her presentation is Measuring the Environmental Sustainability of Upcycled Foods, a Case for Apples. Over to you, Zinette.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here. This is an ongoing endeavor. Again, I think that was the objective of the entire fellowship. So we're actually at the forefront, exploring these research opportunities, and then from my side of things is related to sustainability. My name is Zinette Bors, and I'm an assistant professor at the Agricultural and Biological Engineering Department. So I develop engineering solutions. My background involves processing, packaging, and now systems research. Systems more related to food loss and waste. Household level heavily focused on, and then now a little bit more on the supply chain level, entire supply chain level. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. But when you look at the food systems, you see that it's very complex. And then we actually consider food systems as a system of systems, basically systems of systems. It involves pre-production, production systems, post-production, processing, end of use. And then we all have inputs and resources going into it at any stage. And then we have impacts on related to socioeconomic, environmental, social, environmental, and economic related impacts. And then also outputs and resources, right, coming out of at any level of this entire complex system. And then that's why it's important to consider the food system as a complex system so we can develop tools related to that. So one complex system tool is basically the measurement of complexity. And measurement of complexity, when I say that within the scope of this research, is basically measurement of sustainability. Sustainability is a complex science as well. It's really hard to identify, conceptualize, communicate, measure. But we need to start somewhere, and then usually we measure environmental sustainability. And then this research focuses on specifically the environmental sustainable life cycle assessment perspective, which is a standard tool. But for upcycling foods, it's still under development. We need more research. Even the recent EPA basis scale only utilized 2 upcycled food research related to life cycle assessment to determine the place of the upcycled foods. But we need more research on this to show the benefits or some of the challenges from an objective perspective. So the objective of this research was to understand environmental and economic impacts to level, and then conduct a life cycle assessment, and then also come up with some additional research ideas. So I'm not going to go over too much on the food waste. We know food waste is a big issue. We're all passionate about it, passionate about solving it, minimizing it, addressing it, eliminating it. And upcycling is one of the biggest solutions because it's feeding it back to the humans and then bringing it back to the human nutrition systems. And then overall life cycle assessment, again, we follow the ISO standards for this, the standard metrics for this. And then the goal is basically evaluate and compare environmental economic impacts of upcycling optimal apples into apple juice, animal feed, or compost. And the scope is cradle to gate, cradle to basically factory gate. We haven't considered packaging. Still, again, this is an ongoing research, and we are incorporating those aspects as well. And then the impact categories, we looked at a bunch of different categories, environmental impact categories, and then the functional unit is 1 kilogram of suboptimal apples. So the idea is what can we do from a farmer's perspective with the apples that stay in the farm? Should we feed it back to the humans as apple juice, or as animal feed to in form of wet pig feed, or the compost, or let it stay in the field? So again, here are the boundary system boundaries, and then we consider material energy processing products. And then again, this incorporates apple juice coming out of the apple orchard, and then the other one is compost, and then the other one is wet pig feed. And then the life cycle inventory was gathered from EcoInvent database, but we're discovering the challenges associated with the assumptions, and then the databases related to this. So we need more specific databases related to upcycled foods, and then the approaches as well, to look at how it can offset some of the impacts related to landfilling, or even considered to standard practices. And then the impact categories Tracy method was utilized from the EPA, and then it has many midpoint and endpoint categories as well. And then just looking at the results of this and using life cycle inventory and then the impacts, we see that animal feed has the highest impact compared to apple juice or compost, maybe because we haven't also incorporated the packaging, and then when you include additional consumer uses, maybe apple juice will include more impacts, but looking at the percentages of those. And then from a wasted food scale, we know that donations or upcycling is the most important, yes, not just environmentally impactful, but because the scale is determined based on many factors, not just from an environmental impact perspective, nutrition and other impacts, economic impacts as well. So we looked at, for example, profit that can be gained from individual upcycled product if we turn them into, and then we'll get the majority of benefits from wet pig feed because of the nutritional content, and apple juice second, and a compost third. So looking at these two different metrics, economic and then environmental together, is important. And then also we know that from a global warming potential, it's one of the most widely utilized metrics. We see that apple production comprises the majority of the production impacts, and then diesel related to wet pig feed has the highest impact in the wet pig feed process compared to other impacts. For example, the electricity related to processing and etc. So we did some sensitivity analysis on this. What would mean if we change, let's say 50% or like 20% to 100%, how much of these environmental impact categories would change? We see that even with the smallest change, we can see change in acidification, fossil fuel depletion, global warming, and ozone depletion based on wet pig feed assessments. And then looking at the overall sensitivity results, we see that the percent changes happen more or less the same across different food products, across all these different impacts. And then some of the limitations, of course, this is an ongoing study. We mentioned that, and then we are hoping to publish this soon. We are going into the details of the database. So the publication will hopefully come out in 2024 towards the end of the year. But we know that the social impacts basically lack quantification in this. In another version of this study, because it wasn't detailed, I didn't put it here, but we need to incorporate nutritional impacts of this entire process. And then there are also a lot of assumptions due to few outside resources. We need availability of data, availability of representation of upcycled foods in the major databases related to agriculture, or just even EcoInvent. And I know there are works underway in Europe around this for the database perspective, but we need to do better on this. And then also the limitations of the study, again, we haven't considered transportation and packaging, which is a major source of impact, which may be misleading. That's why we're incorporating those different transportation impacts and packaging impacts and their sensitivity depending on the distances, because upcycling is a circular economy solution, and reverse supply chains contribute a lot to the final quality. Oh, sorry, not the quality, the impact. So conclusions, again, right now it looks like apple juice is the most, optimal upcycling solution, but again, it has limitations, and we actually in the next version of this study, we turned this into apple cider, and we've been having conversations with cideries and people in the apple industry and the farmer trade organizations. And then again, this is not a single endeavor. Dean actually is a partner also in this collaboration, which we're grateful to Upcycled Food Foundation and Carrie for, because it creates these critical partnerships in research. And it's just an evidence that it works. And then the recommendations, again, we need more accurate and raw data. So one just piece of next step slides for my direction of future research is, how can we incorporate these three-dimensional sustainability assessments into the upcycled food ingredient or food utilization? When you look at sustainability assessment indicators, this is from a paper from 2018 in Nature Communications, but looking at sustainability is not one-dimensional, not environmental only. So we need people, profit, and planet. three of the indicators, and then looking at nutrient adequacy and ecosystem stability, socio-cultural well-being, resilience, food safety, waste and loss reduction, and then be able to implement those categories in our life cycle assessments. So it's called actually life cycle sustainability assessment. So the main benefit may not be only related to our planet, but also people. So nutrition, how does nutrition profile work in this system? So yeah, I guess that's all. And we continue. If you would like to partner with us in any way, we have several research endeavors in this area with several organizations, including companies and ReFed and other research or collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zeynep. Thank you for that. And thank you for being a slick 12 minutes on time. Well done, you. It's like you practiced it.
Thank you. It's really hard.
I know 12 minutes is difficult. It's a tall order. And your internet was going a little bit in and out there at the end, but we just on the last slide, but so it held out right until the very end. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions relating to Zeynep's presentation, please don't forget to put them in the Q&A as she goes along. And now we are going to hand over to Dean, who is at Cornell University doing his PhD. And his presentation is called Where There's a Will, There's a Way. Ha ha. See what you did there, Dean. Very clever.
Yes, thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I couldn't resist. Or actually, I guess can you see this? Probably get rid of that.
Yes.
Thank you for the introduction. Couldn't resist making a way pun. Unfortunately, weighing up the options was already taken. There's a review article called that. But I'm Dean. I'm a PhD student at Cornell University in the Alkane Research Group in the Department of Food Science. And as you might have guessed, I'm going to be talking mostly about whey. So a little bit about my background and how I got into upcycling. My first upcycled food project started when we took a tour of a local brewery during my undergraduate project, looking at ways that we could potentially collaborate on research projects. And we sort of went through and I noticed kind of a drawback of a process. So very, very briefly, going to try to go through it really quickly. When you're brewing beer, you can add hops when the beer is hot before it's fermented, when it's called wort, or you can add it when it's cold. Not necessarily cold, but not boiling hot. When you add it hot, it's usually to add bitterness to the beer. When you add it cold, it's usually to add aroma, but all hops have bittering and aroma properties. So I had a question of why can't we reuse the material that we're adding to the beer when it's cold in order to get that bittering that's still left behind. So basically drawing another arrow from this vessel to this vessel. And that evolved into my master's thesis project that I did at Oregon State, which led to this publication, looking at reusing that. So you can look into that if you're interested in brewing. Then I went on to look at some upcycled research in winemaking at E&J Gallo Winery, looking at grape pomace, snack foods at Mondelez. And then a few years ago, I returned to Cornell for my PhD, which is focused on upcycling in dairy. So to give you a little bit of background on what I'm going to be talking about, what is whey? The technical definition or legal definition is that it's a liquid substance obtained from separating the coagulum from milk, cream, or skim milk during cheese making. And you can do that in a number of ways. And whey is not, the things I'm talking about, the dairy effluents, are not necessarily limited to whey. So if you add rennet to milk, making cheeses like cheddar or other rennet coagulated cheeses, you end up with sweet whey cheese. And then you can ultra filter that to make a whey permeate, which basically just removes most of the protein. You can also make cheese by acidifying milk and or adding rennet, which will result in an acid whey that tends to be lower protein and higher acidity. You can also use biological acidification to make yogurt, which you can then concentrate into things like Greek yogurt, Lebna, and skyr, which results in yogurt acid whey. And lately, there's also interest in concentrated milk products like ultra-filtered milks, like Fairlife has a lot of these products, muscle milk, things that are high in protein and low in lactose, and then you end up in a milk permeate. So all these things are, some of them are whey, some of them are just permeates, but they all have some amount of protein, some amount of lactose and minerals that could potentially be reused. And right now, it's not necessarily being used to the fullest extent. So what can we do with it? Historically, people have used it as a health beverage or even for bathing. Before there were strict environmental regulations, people would just discharge it kind of into the river near their dairy plant, which, as you can imagine, isn't great for the environment because of the lactose and minerals and nitrogen and things that are in the whey. Here's a picture from a Cornell publication looking at how you can dispose of whey by applying it to land. So basically using it somewhat as a fertilizer. So you can do that in limited amounts, but obviously probably not all of the acid whey that's generated. Right now, 50% of all of the whey is processed into protein concentrates, lactose, or other products that are consumed by humans or animals, and the remainder goes to land application like this, waste treatment or livestock feed, which can be expensive and not great for the environment. So what we're looking at here is trying to upcycle that into products for human consumption. So how are we doing that? In the Alkene Research Group, which is the group that I'm a part of, we take these lactose-rich effluents and mainly ferment them into new ingredients. There are a few products on the market that look at direct applications. So taking these effluents, maybe flavoring them, doing some kind of processing and turning them into sports beverages or mixers like Spiritonic and Superfrau. But you can also ferment them with different yeasts and under different conditions, with or without adding enzymes, to make a lot of different products. You can make novel alcoholic beverages or spirits, acetic acid beverages, something like a kombucha, or you could just try to convert the lactose into different things and separate those things to make ingredients like ethanol, acetic acid, galactose, or potentially GAS or other things that you might want. So the kind of project that I'm going to focus on today, after that background, is on piquette, which is a new way that some winemakers are looking at to add value to grape pomace from wine production. So grape pomace is the seeds, stems, skins that are left behind after you press the wine or grape juice, depending on what kind of wine you're making, off of the grape pomace. So this is a relatively low, for wine, 4 to 9% alcohol beverage that results from combining that pomace and water and maybe juice, maybe sugar, maybe honey. There's a lot of variety in how people are making these, and then re-fermenting it. It was likely drunk by vineyard workers in old times. It's actually illegal to make in France now, but in other parts of the world you can. And an exciting thing about it is that it's upcycled. And here's some just pictures. This is a product, I think, in Australia. And then these are some US-based winemakers who are making piquettes in the past couple of years. So we had the idea, taking it kind of to the extreme of what happens if we replace the water in the piquette with yogurt acid whey to bring in some lactose that we can ferment and ferment that on grape pomace. So combining these two waste streams to make a new product. And our objectives were kind of just, can we make this beverage? And then what does it taste like? And what is in it? And what is it? How does it compare to commercially available examples of piquettes that we can buy in terms of those two properties? So in order to make the yogurt acid whey piquettes, one of them, we collected yogurt acid whey, YAW, pasteurized it, carbon filtered it, and added a lactase to hydrolyze the lactose, and then fermented it on Cabernet Franc grape pomace that was collected by Cornell Agritech. And then in another case, the yogurt acid was hydrolyzed, dextrose was added, so that's just sugar to add a little bit more alcohol, fermented and carbon filtered. So it came to us kind of as a drink base, and then that was basically aged on the grape pomace to pick up color and flavor and some alcohol. And then we also collected a couple. So these are the two that we produced, the CFAW and CFFAW, Cabernet Franc, and here are the details on preparation. And then these are the 5 that we bought. So 3 more that were produced in New York using water and cane sugar, or apple cider on a variety of either Cabernet Franc or kind of a mix of different pomace. And then these other ones, we got one from Washington State where they did Pinot Noir and they added some juice back to the water. And then this one is kind of a mix of different grape skins from Slovenia where they added water and juice. So trying to get kind of a broad array of what's available on the market. So here are the results from the sensory analysis. I'm going to kind of just gloss over this. If you're interested, I'll send you the paper once I write it. So this is the descriptive analysis methodology. Here are some of the descriptors that we used. And here's a biplot of the sensory attributes. So you can see this is kind of just separating things based on how similar they are without getting into detail. But here are the acid weight piquettes. You can see they're relatively different from the other piquettes. They're higher in dairy, umami, salty, acidic, whereas the other ones kind of group over here with more fruity. And this one's kind of out here with barnyard and other things. So this is telling us that they're quite different from the other ones. If we look at the composition in terms of non-volatile things, aside from maybe acetic acid, we can see that the acid weight piquettes are a little bit lower in alcohol generally, and there's a pretty wide range. So this isn't a very well-defined array of products. And then most of them were fermented to dryness. There's a range of acetic acid and other organic acids. And again, I'm happy to go into more detail, but just kind of wanted to show an overview of all the results that we got. We also looked at the volatile composition, and I made a heat map looking at the concentration of a number of different compounds with the sensory descriptors over here. So you can see that, again, there are a lot of differences. This piquette had a lot of these floral and fruity compounds. The whey piquettes on the left side here had some more of maybe the like waxy, meaty, more interesting kind of funkier things. So this is telling us that these are relatively different from what's out there, and they might not necessarily fit within the piquette category, but they are an interesting opportunity as a novel beverage. And we didn't do consumer sensory, so this isn't liking or disliking. This is just kind of how we're describing them. So that's kind of just the overview of the piquette project. We are working on another round of piquettes for this year. We're going to look at a couple of different post-fermentation treatments and how that affects consumer liking of different attributes. I'm also working on producing acetic acid from cheese whey permeate, mixed fermentations for acetic acid production from lactose, maybe exploring potential lactase enzymes in barley. And then, as Zinette mentioned, I'm working with her on LCA applied to apples. And then just wanted to acknowledge Sam Alkane, my advisor, and our lab techs, Tim and Dana, who helped a lot with this project, Chris and Luann at Cornell Agritech, who produced the piquettes, and Scott LaFontaine at the University of Arkansas, who did the volatile aroma analysis. And then we have some references. So thank you. And then I'll pass it back to Lara.
Thank you very much, Dean. Also bang on time. Well done, you. And thank you for showing us the way there. Just a little way joke. Now we're going to move on to Irene. Irene, welcome. And Irene is presenting on behalf of Alyssa, Billyfield, who was actually the UFF fellow. But Alyssa is, I believe, in Asia at the moment, so is in a completely different time zone. So thank you for stepping in, Irene. The title of Irene's presentation is Exploring the Future of Sustainable Foods Through Nova Classification of Upcycled Certified Products. It's a subject very, very close to my heart, Irene. So over to you, and looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to present here. My name is Irene Yoon, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Washington School of Public Health. And as Laura mentioned, I'm here to present on research that I did on the topic of upcycled foods and nutrition and sustainability, which I did under the supervision of the brilliant Dr. Alyssa Billyfield, who is actually my thesis committee chair. We started work on this in the summer of last year. So moving on. So this slide pretty much just represents are areas of study in my case and expertise in Alyssa's case. You know, just starting from the top, I am a graduate student in the Food Systems, Nutrition, and Health program. In the School of Public Health, this was formerly called the Nutritional Sciences program at the time that I started. And this is where Alyssa was core faculty and pretty much where I was introduced to the, or when I first learned about upcycled foods. My 2 degree programs are in the areas of public health nutrition and dietetics. I tried to represent public health with that little icon in the middle. And that bottom left is supposed to be nutritional sciences. That green symbol on the right just represents sustainability, which is an interest that Alyssa and I share and, you know, is obviously central to this project. And those other 2 kind of gray icons just kind of represent how Alyssa is an expert in both food systems and in business entrepreneurship overall. Now, moving on to the inspiration behind this project, it was actually this article on upcycled foods. And pretty much, so it was published in November of 2022. And pretty much what it said was, you know, sure, upcycled foods are good for the environment, but like, why doesn't the certification consider nutritional value of foods in addition to just sustainability? So the central question we had was asking both if and how upcycled foods contribute to health and sustainability. And to try to, you know, boil down our intentions to one sentence, it's pretty much, you know, just that, you know, since both planetary health and human nutrition are key for overall health and healthy eating, you know, our research was going to try to categorize upcycled foods using a classification system called NOVA, just to get an idea of how, for lack of a better word, how healthy, you know, the world of upcycled foods is. Now we had, you know, 3 basic research objectives. The first was just to apply NOVA classification to all currently certified upcycled foods. And this was we're using data from August 2023. So it was up to date to that point. And our second aim was to analyze the results of this classification to try to understand the breakdown of the degrees of processing of upcycled food. So again, kind of thinking of processing as a proxy for, you know, how healthy or how nutritious upcycled foods are. And then our third aim was, you know, at the end of all of this, to make recommendations for both the NOVA classification system and maybe for upcycled foods as well, just based on our findings. And now I'm going to go into NOVA. Many of you may already know what it is. But if you haven't heard of it, it's actually not an acronym. It's just a name. But NOVA is a system that categorizes food based on the level of processing they have undergone. It's the most widely used system of its kind, just because it's generally pretty easy to understand and accessible, you know, categorizes food into 4 groups. It doesn't require proprietary information a lot of the time, and it's been considered a gold standard way of classifying foods for a while. It's used by several governments to make federal food and nutrition recommendations. It was adopted by the FAO as well. And just to give you a quick overview, basically group 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. So that can be stuff like, you know, fresh produce, dried nuts, things like that. Group 2 is processed culinary ingredients, and that includes foods that are typically not consumed alone. They're added to other foods. So it includes foods like table salt, olive oil. Group 3 is called processed foods. And it's typically a combination of group 1 and group 2. So for example, canned fish, which may have fish plus a processed culinary ingredient like salt. And then finally, we have group 4. Group 4 is what NOVA calls ultra-processed foods. And basically, these 4 groups are used to make recommendations for healthy eating patterns with the assumption that people should be eating more from groups 1 to 3 and much less from group 4. Now, just to kind of go into the 3 ways that NOVA outlines classification, just the methods of classification. The first is the location and scale of processing. So that's looking at whether a food, for example, was mass produced in an industrial setting, or if it was made at home. The second way that NOVA categorizes food products is looking at the purpose of processing. So, for example, whether that food was processed in order to make it more convenient to eat, or if it was processed to make the food safer to eat. And the third major way that NOVA classifies food is based on the degree and extent of change, how much the food changed, such as, how many ingredients were added to this. And where this gets interesting is, when we looked at these three methods, we kind of realized how much NOVA guidelines doesn't, cover, or where it's not very explicit on how to categorize a lot of foods. We had a few questions, such as what happens when a food meets criteria for more than one group. For example, if a food uses an industrial process, but doesn't have any added ingredients, is that still considered an ultra-processed food? And we just ended up finding that there were a lot of areas of ambiguity and contradictions, which I will go into shortly. And our methods for this project were just to start with data acquisition and quality control. And basically we got the data set of upcycled certified products. As of August 2023, we tried to eliminate duplicates or resolve any errors that we found in the data set. And we also eliminated food that we basically couldn't find any information on. So that included foods that were probably not yet on the market or were taken off. Step 2 is the actual categorization or classification into NOVA groups after we, removed all the products that we couldn't find any information on. And then the third step was just the analysis of results. And I will mention here that step 2 is purely descriptive. So this included a lot of judgment calls, a lot of attempts to interpret and apply NOVA guidelines. And I'll go into the results right now. So this was the breakdown of all 476 upcycled certified products at the time that we started. So you can see that we started with 476, but our final sample that we ended up using was 157 products. 91 products were excluded because they weren't explicitly meant for consumption. So it included things like pet food. We have this big category of insufficient data. So that includes both products that we couldn't find any information on, but it also included about 87 products that we just couldn't classify or categorize because NOVA did not provide specific enough guidelines. And I'll go into specific examples a little bit later. And when we look at this final sample of 157, you can see that most upcycled certified food products landed in group 4, ultra processed foods. And this was really interesting because when you look at the world of upcycled certified foods, you'll see that a lot of them actually promote health and nutrition, are very conscious of the ingredients that they have. And we started thinking, is NOVA classification misleading? And I'll go into a few examples of foods that we categorize that were pretty straightforward, and then some that are a little bit more controversial. So an example of, so this is where I'll go into just one example in each category that was pretty straightforward to classify. The first is cacao fruit pulp, just 100% pure cacao fruit pulp. That is a group 1 unprocessed or minimally processed food. This is actually the only product in group 2 of the 157 that we analyzed. It's organic date sugar. It actually has nothing added to it, but because it's an ingredient and not something that's typically consumed alone, that's why it's in group 2. These canned beans are an example of a processed food, group 3. And then finally, a food product that we placed in group 4 included this plant-based egg substitute. You can kind of see that the ingredients show some additives, so that fit pretty easily into group 4. So kind of going into the shortcomings of NOVA classification that we found while doing this research, one major issue with NOVA is that it assumes that all ultra-processed foods should be avoided and they're always associated with negative health outcomes. And it is possible that this may have been more true at the time that NOVA was first developed, where a lot of the ultra-processed foods on the market were a little bit less health conscious, but that's definitely not the case today. So that was, a major shortcoming that this analysis of upcycled certified foods really highlighted. And so we'll skip that. Another shortcoming was the fact that we couldn't categorize 87 products due to contradictions and ambiguity within NOVA. And this is just kind of showing, these are little snippets from their guidelines for each group. And you'll kind of notice that the descriptions of all 4 groups actually mention that the food can contain additives, which was a bit confusing. And, I just want to highlight that this made us think, ultra-processed foods are maybe by some definitions ultra-processed, but they're also very conscious of health and nutrition. So what is being missed when we overly simplify the nature and nutritional value of all ultra-processed foods by saying, all of them are bad for us, all of them are something we need to avoid? And then the question of, is there actually such a thing as a healthy ultra-processed food? And just a few examples that may be a little bit more controversial. So with this one, depending on your perspective, you may see this as pasta or you may see it as noodles. And this is where you can see a little bit of the subjectivity or bias, if you want to call it that, with NOVA food. So basically, pasta is considered a group 1 food because it's a staple in Western cultures. Noodles are an ultra-processed food because of the convenience. Flour, it's fortified with iron and folic acid, but it's also considered group 1, which is maybe a little bit different from what you would expect. Group 3, just an example showing that it doesn't matter whether or not preservatives are added to the canned fish, for example, it's still always group 3. And then just an example of a pretty controversial ultra-processed food, infant formula, which is in many times medically necessary. And I'll try to quickly go through the rest of this. This is just another controversial example of an upcycled product that is purely salmon and then a few herbs and spices, but is probably considered an ultra-processed food because it undergoes molding to shape the product, which is listed as one of the processes that define a food as ultra-processed. For the sake of time, I'll skip this. Our main limitations in this project were just, the lack of publicly available nutrition information and the individual bias and perspective that was needed to apply these methods. Ultra-processed foods are becoming increasingly different from the ones that were analyzed in the past and linked to negative health consequences. We believe the benefits of upcycled food extend far beyond sustainability and planetary health. And finally, our recommendations, just one for NOVA to create guidelines for classification that are a lot more clear, a lot more exhaustive, and also that are aligned with current research. Second, for upcycled foods to possibly consider a more holistic approach to certification beyond sustainability. And that would be just to combat a lot of this criticism. And then third, just for the blanket term ultra-processed foods to be reconsidered altogether, just in light of all these foods that we think are important, good for the environment, or necessary for health that have this label, which maybe misrepresents its value, their value. And I'll skip this. Basically, to end this, just what's next is we are in the process of turning this into a manuscript for publication. I've just listed my name and my co-authors. So Alyssa and Hyunju Kim are my committee members. So please, keep an eye out for our publication, which will hopefully happen later this year. Thank you. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you, Irene. I could do 90 minutes on the Nova classification and all the problems with it, Irene, honestly. I have real issues with a tool that was designed with good intention, but essentially is very blunt and actually could be very dangerous because it could exclude a wide range of foods for vulnerable members of society. So yeah, I welcome a debate on evolving that classification to be more meaningful. And moving on, we will now go to Hongjun. Hongjun, I hope that your internet is working, and if it isn't, that's totally okay. We will work around you, that you've had some issues. We're delighted to have you here, and over to you.
Hi, thank you, Laura, for the introduction. Hi, my name is Hongjun. I am on the marketing faculty at the University of Pittsburgh. This is my third year of being an Upcycled Food Research Fellow. Originally, my Upcycled Food Research focused more on consumers' price perception of upcycled food, how they react to promotion messages that is highlighting different aspects of upcycled food and the framing of promotion message. And lately, I moved my focus more to understanding consumer awareness of upcycled food. And this project that I'm going to present today is a collaboration with my colleague, Tianwen, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Georgia. And we're both from business school. I think Tianwen is attending this seminar as well, so he may be able to respond to some of the questions that you might have. All right, so let me get started. So first of all, I want to give some background for how to help us to understand why do we want to understand consumer awareness. So the figure that I'm showing here is what we call the purchase decision process. It shows us for a typical consumer before they reach the purchase decision, which is what a lot of practitioners care about the most, whether or not they will buy something. They need to go through several steps ahead of time, starting from recognizing there's a problem and that they see in new product development, we say that a product is a solution to a perceived problem, and consumer would want to buy product that can help them solve certain problem that they perceive. Then moving on to the information search, why would this product be helpful in solving the problem? What value, what benefit can this product provide? Moving on to comparing the alternatives, such as products made by different brands and all that. Then move on to the purchase decision. And after purchase decision, some consumer may engage in post-purchase behavior, such as word of mouth, or leaving a review on how they felt about a product. So as we can see here, even before a consumer can reach a purchase decision, they need to first recognize the problem, and that is the foundation for any of the next steps, such as the information search and alternative evaluation. And here is where consumer awareness come into play. So for a consumer to purchase an upcycled food, first they need to be aware of upcycled food and be aware of what kind of problem upcycled food is trying to solve. And they also need to understand what benefit can upcycled food provide before they can move on to the later stage. And if we take a deeper look into consumer awareness, there's a well-established understanding on the level of consumer awareness in the advertising literature. Basically, we say that there are 5 levels of consumer awareness. Level 1, which is unaware, consumers don't know they have a problem at all. They don't know if there's a problem that even worth solving. Then moving on to the next level, they become more aware of the situation. They sense that there's a problem worth solving, for example, food waste, but at this stage, it's not necessarily that they understand that there may be a solution to it. Then level 3 is they become aware of the solution. For example, to some consumer, after they realize that food waste is a huge problem in the society, they may start doing research and come to the understanding that upcycled food is one solution to this problem. But at this stage, level 3 is still not necessarily that they understand or have become aware of the specific products that's available to them on the market, because upcycled food is a very general term, but in particular, what kind of upcycled food, what brand, it will take time for consumer to reach that level of awareness, which is level 4. And level 5 is they have already become very familiar with the product, with the brand. They know what to buy, and they may start engaging in repeating purchase behavior. So this is 5 level of consumer awareness. My research question are, first is, what is the current consumer awareness level for upcycled foods? Upcycled food has been existed in the market for several years now. The last couple of years, a lot of research, we focus on how to introduce this rather new concept of upcycled food to consumers and how to increase consumers' acceptance of upcycled food. With all the effort being put in, educating the consumers and promoting the upcycled food product, one of the questions that we have is, what is the current awareness level for upcycled food? Have they reached product aware level 4 yet, or are they still staying more on the lower level? The second question that we have is that, how does consumer awareness level change over time? Is it gradually increasing, or is it remain stable over time, or is it decreasing? And to provide understanding, a more in-depth understanding of this, here we compare with other upcycled food other upcycled products, such as upcycled clothing, which also been existing in the market for quite some time now. So we will compare consumer awareness level between upcycled food versus upcycled clothing. And the last question that we have is that, how does critical events such as the Upcycled Certified Program opening impact consumer awareness for upcycled food? And that's the research question that we attempt to answer with this data set. This data set that we have is secondary data. We use a third-party vendor to sample over 10,000 social media posts from Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, now known as X, related to upcycled foods and upcycled clothing from 2020 to 2024, July of 2024. And here is a descriptive of the number of posts across the time. As we can see here, upcycled clothing definitely had more mention compared to upcycled food. It's a more popular term, relatively speaking. And to give you more example of what it looked like for a social media post, the one on the left-hand side is a Facebook post that talk about upcycled food. It's related to World Food Day. This consumer particularly talk about the food waste problem. And as you can see, this person explain in detail how upcycled food can help reduce food waste and call for action, ask more people to join to purchase upcycled food to support upcycled food. And on the right-hand side, we see a comment from Twitter that is similar in a way. However, if you look at it closely, you realize that the one on the right-hand side, upcycled clothing, does not explicitly talk about what problem upcycled clothing is trying to solve. Rather, it focuses more on the product aspect, particular product. And to get into the result, before we get into the result, let's talk about the outcome variable, reiterate it one more time. First, we look into problem awareness, solution awareness, and product awareness, which will represent level 2 to 4 of consumer awareness level. And here's an example of how we evaluate the awareness level. So basically, how we process the data is we take the data from social media, and then we feed it to OpenAI using the ChatGPT model, the most advanced one. And then we feed ChatGPT the definition of consumer awareness and ask ChatGPT on a scale of 1 to 7 to what extent a certain comment reflect problem awareness, solution awareness, and product awareness. We ran through a series of testing to make sure the response that we get from ChatGPT reflect the general understanding of the definition. And here's an example of it. This Father's Day gift idea for those who love good old barbecue. Talk about upcycle ingredient and all that. This particular post, ChatGPT rated it to have 5 out of 7 on problem awareness, 6 out of 7 for solution awareness, and 7 out of 7 for product awareness. And as you can see here, this particular comment talk about a very specific upcycled food product, which is the Huawei botanical roasted garlic butcher's salt, this upcycled salt here. And it definitely mentioned it, the problem and the solution. However, the focus here is being placed more on the product side. And if we look at the last part, post-consumption likelihood, this one is we asked ChatGPT when you're reading this comment to what extent that you think this comment is more like a post-consumption review in comparison to how likely it is more like a branded promotion. For an example, branded promotion would be a post posted by the brand that sell or make this product. And for the first comment that we're showing here, the likelihood for it to be a post-consumption comment is on the lower side, 3 out of 7. To be on the higher side will be the second example I'm showing at the bottom of the screen. Upcycle with me. I've been obsessed with upcycle chips lately. So this will sound more personal and sound more like this post is related to post-consumption review engagement. So this post received 6 out of 7 on the scale. Here's the result. Starting at level 2 problem awareness, we can see that upcycle food for all the posts across the years, we can see that it has a higher problem awareness compared to upcycle clothing. This suggests that consumers, when they talk about upcycle food, they are aware of what particular problem that this upcycle food in general can solve. And when we look at the solution awareness, we see the same pattern here. Upcycle food show higher solution awareness in comparison with upcycled clothing and also across time. And for this one, we can see lately that the difference become larger, even suggesting that people have become more aware of upcycled food being a solution to the food waste problem. Then moving on to product awareness, we see a consistent pattern here, but the difference is not as big as the solution and the problem awareness. This suggests that practitioner in current days should put more effort into helping consumer understand what particular upcycled food products are available to them for them to choose. Moving on to the last one, we have the post-consumption engagement likelihood. If we look at the y-axis, we can see the scores are all pretty low. This suggests that regardless we're talking about upcycled food or upcycled clothing, most social media posts are branded promotions instead of coming directly from consumer after they have tried the product. So a lot of promotion effort that we see throughout the year, but there's still room for improvement for us to encourage consumer to share what they think of the actual product after the consumption here. And at the end, for the critical event impact, we focus on Upcycled Certified Food Program opening in the US, which was launched in June 2021. What we find is that this particular event significantly increased problem solution, product awareness, as well as post-consumption engagement for upcycled food that suggests the significance of this critical event. And also we found that very likely because this food program opening was based in the United States, the increases were more prominent in the US market compared to the other markets, such as the Canada market or other places around the globe. So that suggests also we have opportunity to do more research to understand the global impact on certain critical events. So that's all for me today. For all the research interests that I have, besides consumer awareness, I also like to look into product evaluation and price perceptions. And here's again, this project is a joint work between myself and my colleague Tian Wen. And we welcome any questions or interest that you may have. You can direct it to me. Oh, I have a typo here. It's hongjun.e@cats.pit.edu. I'll fix that before I send out the slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hongjun. Okay, so over to Chetan. Are you there, Chetan? Chetan is going to be talking about elevating consumer perception and addressing barriers to upcycled foods.
Yeah, hi, I'm
The
here. Thanks.
University of Tennessee.
It's a Tennessee State University. Let me correct that.
Okay, Tennessee
I think
State.
it's a yeah. Let
Okay,
me see how
your
I can
12
share
your
my.
12 minutes starts now, Chetan.
Okay.
Are you sharing some slides?
Yeah, I have a presentation and I think I can share that somehow. Screen. Let me see.
You see the
see my
you see the share screen button?
yeah. Can you see my screen now?
No, we cannot.
I know.
Are you having technical issues, Chetan? Because we could move on to Daria while you just figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. That would be good because I think I need some time with the.
Okay, if you can take off your video and then we'll move on to Daria. Daria? Thank you
Hello.
very much. Hello, lovely to see you, Daria, all the way
Yes,
from
same here. Thank you.
We're delighted to have you, and thanks for stepping in. So you're going to be talking about upcycled and functional food products. Over to you, Daria. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Here we go. It's all right. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can, Daria. All good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm very excited to share my research update with the cohort and also with the audience. I will start with the ultimate question of how did I get into upcycling? And I actually like calling myself an upcycler before it was even called that, because this picture here shows the cover of my PhD project, which was completed in 2011. And in this project, it was in Aarhus University, Denmark, and we were collaborating with a salmon farm up in Norway. And this farm was producing salmon oil from the wastes of the fish after the fillet was removed. And this oil was, as you can see here, was not rich in omega-3 PUFA because it was a farmed fish and they were feeding them with vegetable oil-based feed. So what I did was I applied an enzymatic hydrolysis to remove these fatty acids and reserve the others in the product, which ended up in almost double in the first round. And afterwards, we purified the product by molecular distillation and applied the hydrolysis once again. And as you can see, the concentration was increased to up to 50%. And I have 5 papers out of this thesis, and also we patented the pathway, as you can see. So yes, this is how I got into upcycling. And fast forward today, right now I'm located in Istanbul Technical University of Turkey in the food engineering department. And this section up here was the commitment that I put in my application back in 2023 when I was applying for this fellowship. And I'm going to have a little bit of a more busy presentation from the previous fellows, I guess, because I have a lot of projects that I would like to touch on. But generally speaking, I can say that these are all focusing on production of bioactive components from food waste in an environmentally friendly fashion. And afterwards, these components are applied in either food or biomedical applications, where the bioavailability is looked up on. And if available, then we are also looking at the consumer acceptance. So today I chose to focus on the development of upcycled beverages. I will show you 2 examples from this field. This paper, this is an open access paper. Everyone can reach it, and this was actually published just last week. Within this project, we produced a fermented beverage, and we focused on enriching this beverage with gamma aminobutyric acid, which is called GABA in short. And I believe many of you have already heard that ingredient, which is popular ingredient in the functional food industry nowadays. Basically, it's a non-protein amino acid with different functions depending on the host. But why the food industry is interested in this ingredient is its effects on the mood modulation and sleep improvement. In the United States and in Canada, there are several products with GABA already, but it's not approved in the European Union yet, but hopefully it will be at some point. So what we did was we collected the peels of pomegranate juice from an industrial company, and we separated the pectin from this waste by ethanolic precipitation. And after drying this pectin fraction, we applied hydrolysis, enzymatic hydrolysis, so that the molecular structure is smaller, which will make it easier for the probiotic microorganisms to consume in the next stage, which is the fermented carrot juice production. And within this carrot juice, we used these hydrolysases as a prebiotic to improve the fermentation of Lactobacillus brevis. And the end product was a functional fermented beverage. We applied different combinations of enzyme concentration and hydrolysis period to select the best one, working towards higher viability in the final product and also higher GABA production in the final product. And we also observed that if the hydrolysate had higher glucose content, it was better for the probiotic to produce GABA. So this is the combination that we ended up with to be applied for hydrolysate production, which was then added to the carrot juice for fermentation. One other ingredient we had to add was MSG, because we tried without adding that, and it does work. Fermentation can move forward with no problem. But in the samples without MSG, we did not have any GABA, because the probiotic microorganisms require a precursor for GABA production, and that precursor is MSG. So we added that in at 2% concentration as well. And finally, I'm just showing you the GABA graph. This is the one with no prebiotic pectin hydrolysate from peels, whereas this is the highest concentration, 4% concentration. You can clearly see the difference, the increase in GABA production. It was around 1.5-fold compared to the control, but that was not the only bioactive component that we were looking at. We measured the phenolic compound concentration, which obviously is another bioactive fraction, and we obtained around 5-fold of increase. And the antioxidant activity from the phenolic compounds and the pectin altogether was around 8-fold increased in this product compared to the control. And finally, the organic acids were, of course, increased as a result of the fermentation. This is the final concentration of GABA in our final product. This is significantly higher compared to the previous literature, and we're very happy with that. And this work is actually being expanded right now for larger project applications, project proposals, as we discussed earlier with Laura. And this is the starting material. I wanted to put this in this slide as well, because this is converted to this, and I think it's a nice example of showing that upcycled, not only upcycled, but also functional beverages or products in general, but beverages are consumer popular segment in the functional food market. So the functional food production with upcycling is, I think, has potential for further growth in the future. So with saying that, I'm sorry, it's around 7 p.m. right now, and I'm home, and my cat is just screaming, and I'm sorry for that. This is the second example within the beverages field. It's a little bit of an older work, but I still wanted to show it to you because this work also had consumer study. We had a sensory panel. This is the starting material, hazelnut meal, which is very rich in protein. So we precipitated the protein from this waste and then incorporated into this final product. And it's an energy drink type product. And then we asked the consumers if they liked it compared to the commercial counterpart. And we were very happy to see that even though it had higher protein, which makes it a little bit of bitter, the consumers preferred 4% protein beverage as much as the reference, which had only 1% of protein. So again, I think this is one of the ways to go where we can incorporate upcycling together with functionality in these products. So now I will continue with a little bit of what is going on right now in our lab. I'm really sorry about that. This is a large project that is going on right now. We are collecting different leaves from agricultural fields, which are just left on the field. The leaves of beetroot, broccoli, cauliflower, and black carrot. These are not used for anything other than maybe sometimes if they are not too lazy to collect them, they can be used for animal feeding, but these leaves are actually rich in protein. So what we do is we're pressing these leaves to produce this juice, which is called green juice in the literature. And we are looking at the properties and the potentiality of this green juice as well, but that's a different story. What I will mention mainly here is we're applying different types of protein precipitation methods on these juices and trying to select the best one based on yield and also quality. And so far, the heat application was better compared to acidification or fermentation, as you can see this one over here. And the best working one was cauliflower leaf. So in the following stages of this project, we will look into their application in upcycled foods as well. And finally, this is a project that is almost done, and this is the first paper out. This is also an open access paper. You can reach it easily. What we did was we collected the orange juice waste from a juice factory, and we separated essential oil, pectin, and flavonoid again by using environmentally friendly approaches, which are hydrodistillation and then ultrasound. And these two fractions had bioactive potential. So this is not a food application, but I still wanted to show it to you to as an example to show where upcycling can go. We incorporated these fractions into two different structures, hydrogel and nanofiber, which can potentially be used for wound dressing applications. And this one over here, nanofiber with flavonoids, worked best. So we're at the final stage. This picture here is showing us merely, not too close up because it's not a very pleasant scene, but these are rats in their cages and their wounds have started 2 days ago. We are applying nanofibers to see if they will help healing their wounds. So that was it. I didn't check time. I hope I didn't overdo my time, and thank you for listening.
You're bang on time, Daria, just on time. Thank you. And
Great.
I'm particularly interested in the wound healing work because I used to work in cosmetics and personal care. So I'm always delighted to see the crossover between food and personal care. And actually in my previous life, we were also looking at pectin extraction from banana skins for the same reason, actually.
Okay, awesome.
So great minds think alike.
Thanks a lot.
As they say. So thank you, Daria. Right. And last but not least, Chetan, are you ready?
Hi, Laura. Let me see. Let me try that. This laptop is very new. I just got it this week, and it's not somehow accepting me as a boss. So let me see.
It's resisting, is it? There we go.
Yeah, somehow.
We can see your slides, Chetan.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks everyone. I hope all of you had presented very. I mean, I learned so much, and I am Chetan Sharma, and I just started this June as a research assistant professor in Tennessee State University, and before that I was a teaching assistant professor at UW Stout, and before that I was working as a postdoc in Drexel with John. I am thankful to John, and I am thankful to Upcycled Food Association and to Carrie for providing the fellowship. And I mean, due to my quick changing of the jobs, and also because I want something more on a research side. So far, I haven't started as such anything tangible, but I prepared some questionnaire and screener for my latest student. She will be working with me by the end of this month, by the start of next month. So far I will be presenting just a few ideas here, what I learned, and we do published one opinion on a current opinion in biotech with John on upcycling and in the combination of biotechnology. But let's start with the so how I came into upcycling. If I look at professionally, definitely, I mean, this is obvious that we don't want to reduce or we don't want to make more wastage. Almost about 30 to 40% of the food doesn't go into the I mean it just ends up as a wastage. So that is not a very good thing being in a food in a field. I always see that that should not be the case, and upcycling is a way to enhance the sustainable practices. So I definitely see upcycling in a long way, that it is a very good technique, and it is a very good way to curb the wastage of food, and how we can make our economy more like a circular. But there are also some of my personal not so obvious reasons why I like upcycling and or why I am into upcycling. My personal upbringing, like Dean mentioned, I still remember that my mom, we call it paneer. We curdle the milk and we call it paneer. a kind of a cheese, and then we use whey into a dough, so that we it gives some quality to the dough, and we make tortillas from that. So recycling and circular economy was I grew up on a countryside, so that was a big part of my life. And so some of those not so personal reasons that gives me a more satisfaction when I look at upcycling. And being a sensory, I am a trained sensory scientist. So I see upcycling as a it gives a direction to my research, or it gives a more satisfaction if I connect my sensory science learnings with the upcycling. So area of my research is sensory science. As I mentioned, I am a trained sensory science scientist, graduated from Kansas State University, and I mostly work around in sensory and consumer behavior. So some of you who I think most of the panelists, they are familiar with sensory science, but for the audience who are not familiar as such with the sensory science is basically when you are using all your five senses to measure, analyze, or interpret the human response to food or beverage, or maybe it could be to a personal care product. That's what sensory science is, and this definition is quite well accepted around the globe. The other definition I really like is about sensory science is this is a cluster of methods. We use many different kind of methods, either coming from psychology or from statistics, from anthropology, sociology, chemistry. So sensory science is quite a field of methods. And if you look at the books around in this field, you will see that if I'm not wrong, 70 to 80% books, they just are about methods, rapid methods, traditional methods, discrimination methods. Everything is about methodology, how we can better measure the human responses. So that's what my my research area and my training is. When I joined Drexel, I came into contact with John, and I came to know about upcycling, and I was very happy because I was working in before joining Drexel in an area where I was more interested about the tangible, the sociology part, the something on a ground which gives you a more satisfaction. And so that was my first interaction with upcycling. And I proposed a grant there in Drexel, which I got funded, but somehow I have to leave Drexel quickly because I got a job, the permanent one. So anyhow, but that's my area of researches, and under that I like to work more on aroma and language methodology, of course, because sensory science is a methodology, and consumer behavior. And I think these these areas are quite and they sync quite well with the upcycling. For example, oh, this is just a slide from my work. This is how a sensory scientist we like to work, and this is what we do mostly in the lab. So when I came to come to upcycling, I saw this definition, and I often read it quite a few of times, that upcycling is mostly defined by elevating or by increasing either. So we are elevating the quality, we are increasing the quality of a product by upcycling. So it means you are looking for quality enhancement and value enhancement. And this definition got me uh, into a thinking mode, that how I can understand more that how people associate quality with the upcycling. So that's where I proposed the grant in Drexel, and the same grant my student would be working on by the next month. So the first thing was, I thought that aroma can play a big role in elevating, because we are saying that upcycling elevates everything. Upcycling is more like increasing the quality. So aroma can also play that part, because when I was working way back, like I think 4 years back, I was biking in a countryside in New Zealand, and there was a mustard flowers field, and mustard flower is very common in my hometown back in India. And it just took a second to take me from New Zealand to back to my home in India. So aroma has a very, very strong power, and very it changes your bodily capacity. It can make you happy in a second. So I was thinking like when I proposed my idea for upcycling, this was one of my idea that if I test different aroma types with the in the context of upcycling, how they can elevate the quality of the product and how it can maybe mellow some of those negative connotations which are associated with upcycling, especially because it's a reused, or sometimes we say that, oh, it may be in the trash can. These carrot trimmings may be coming from the trash can. So how we can mellow those feelings with the help of aroma. So that was one of the objective in my grant. And the second thing was though we talk about upcycling and we say that upcycling, I mean, we should look at, but there is no such thing as a universal consumer. There is a segment for every consumer. So I think a segmentation and consumer especially can play a big part in knowing the need of the consumers who can or need or knowing the quality aspect of the consumer who purchase upcycled food. So segmentation is a big part, and this was the one of my paper on segmentation, where we classified the consumers who buy potatoes, and what are the attitude, what are the belief, and what are the things they look at. So that was one of the application of sensory science into upcycling. And the third thing is a consumer behavior. So this is also a second objective of my research into upcycling, is to get insights into the quality perception of consumers. So this will be tested by theory of planned behavior. So this will be covered in by my student. And so that's all, nothing much more. And this is a paper we published, and so my student has to start working by next month on this. So with that, that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're muted, Laura.
I'd clicked Zoom off then. We are at time. It's 9:30. So we overran a little bit. And in the interest of the attendees' time, we don't really have time for a Q&A, unfortunately. But I do want to take the opportunity to say thank you to all the UFF fellows for sharing their research. For those of you that are still on the line, I'm sure you'll agree there's a great breadth and diversity of the science that everybody is pursuing. I think they're making collectively, individually and collectively, they're making a significant contribution to furthering the understanding of upcycled foods and ingredients, and also food systems, and creating new, sustainable and nutritious food systems. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to everybody for listening. What we're going to do is this, because we run out of time for Q&A. If anybody has quite a burning question that they would like answered, please email us. And what we will do is we will try and turn the Q&A into a blog post that will go into the UFA Digest newsletter. So there will be a follow-up. There'll be a roundup of this session anyway, and it would be great if we could include some of the Q&A that you were burning to ask, but we didn't have time for today. So thank you to everybody who attended. We really appreciate it. Oh yes, you can email me at lara@upcycledfoods.com, and I will work with Mariel and Jonathan and Amanda and the team to make sure those answers are reflected in our next newsletter and our digest. Dean, Zenit, Hongjun, Chetan, Deria, Irene, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And onwards and upcycling, I should say. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.